I cut off my entire family on December 20th, and honestly, it was the best Christmas gift I ever gave myself. I know how that sounds. Cold, heartless. But if you'd seen what I saw, if you'd lived what I lived, you'd understand why I walked away from every single one of them and never looked back. My name is Vanessa, and for 28 years, I thought I had the picture-perfect family. Sure, we had our issues like everyone else, but I believed we loved each other. I believed that family meant something. I believed that blood was thicker than water, that we'd always have each other's backs, that the bonds we shared were unbreakable. I was so incredibly wrong. It started innocently enough, the way these things always do. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 3 years, and we were finally in a good place. We'd struggled through his job loss, my miscarriage, and all the normal stresses of building a life together. But by that December, things were looking up. Marcus had gotten a promotion at his architectural firm, we'd just bought our first house, and we were talking about trying for another baby. Life felt full of possibility. My family had always been close, or so I thought. There was my mom, Diane, who called herself the family matriarch and loved hosting everyone at her house in the suburbs. My older brother, Trevor, married to Alexis, with 2 kids I adored. My younger sister, Bethany, single and living her best life as a travel blogger. And my dad, Robert, who was quiet, but who I always thought of as my anchor, my rock, the one person who truly understood me. We had a tradition of spending every Christmas together at my parents' house. My mom would start planning in October, going overboard with decorations, making lists of gifts for everyone, coordinating who would bring what dish. It was chaos, but it was our chaos. I loved it. I looked forward to it all year. That December, about a week before Christmas, Marcus had to fly to Chicago for an emergency work thing. A major client was threatening to pull out of a multi-million-dollar project, and Marcus was the only one who could salvage it. He was supposed to be gone for 3 days. I was disappointed, but I understood. Work is work, and this promotion had been huge for us. The day after Marcus left, my mom called me in tears. She was frantic, barely coherent, saying that my dad had chest pains and she'd rushed him to the emergency room. My heart dropped into my stomach. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the hospital, texting Trevor and Bethany on the way. When I got there, my mom was in the waiting room, mascara streaked down her face. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing about how she couldn't lose him, how they'd been together for 35 years, how she didn't know what she'd do without him. I held her, stroked her hair, told her everything would be okay, even though I was terrified myself. Trevor and Alexis showed up about 20 minutes later, and Bethany arrived shortly after that. We all huddled together, waiting for news. The doctor finally came out and told us that Dad had a mild heart attack, but he was stable. They were keeping him for observation and running more tests. We could see him, but only 2 at a time. Mom went in first, of course, and she insisted I come with her. When I saw my dad lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs, looking so small and vulnerable, I started crying. He'd always been this larger-than-life figure to me. Seeing him like that was devastating. He squeezed my hand and told me not to worry. He said he was tough, that it would take more than a little heart attack to take him down. He even cracked jokes. That was Dad, always trying to make everyone else feel better, even when he was the one suffering. Over the next 3 days, we took turns visiting him. Mom barely left his side. I brought her food and clean clothes, made sure she was taking care of herself. Trevor handled the logistics, talking to doctors and dealing with insurance. Bethany kept us all entertained with stories from her travels, trying to keep the mood light. We were a team. We were family.
Marcus called me every night from Chicago, asking about Dad. telling me how much he wished he could be there. I told him not to worry, that we had everything under control, that he should focus on his work emergency. He promised he'd fly back as soon as he possibly could. Dad was released from the hospital on December 18th, 2 days before our big Christmas gathering. The doctors told him to take it easy, watch his diet, reduce stress, and follow up with a cardiologist. Mom immediately went into full caretaker mode, setting up a recovery station in their living room, meal prepping heart-healthy food, organizing his medications. That evening, we all gathered at their house to welcome Dad home. Mom ordered pizza, Dad's favorite, even though it definitely wasn't on his new diet, but she said one night wouldn't hurt. We sat around the living room, laughing and talking, just grateful he was okay. At some point, I went to the kitchen to get more drinks. That's when I overheard them. Trevor and Alexis were in the hallway, just outside the kitchen, talking in low voices. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I swear, but I heard Marcus's name and I froze. I still can't believe she doesn't know, Alexis was saying. This whole time, right under her nose. She's always been oblivious. Honestly, it's kinda sad. Do you think we should tell her? Alexis asked. And ruin Christmas? No way. Besides, it's not our place. If she finds out, she finds out. My blood ran cold. I stepped back, my mind racing. What didn't I know? What was right under my nose? Were they talking about Marcus? They had to be talking about Marcus. I walked back into the living room with the drinks, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. I looked around at my family, all of them, laughing and chatting, like everything was normal. Did they all know something I didn't? Was I the only one in the dark? I tried to catch Trevor's eye, but he was focused on his phone. I looked at Bethany, who was showing Mom something on her laptop. I looked at Dad, who was reclining in his chair, looking tired but content. Everyone seemed so normal, so casual, like nothing was wrong. I felt like I was going crazy. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe they were talking about something else entirely. But that phrase kept echoing in my head, right under her nose. What was right under my nose? When I got home that night, I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring, sounding exhausted. He asked about Dad, and I gave him the update. Then, trying to sound casual, I asked how things were going in Chicago. Honestly, terrible. This client is being impossible. We're working around the clock trying to save this project. I barely slept last night. When do you think you'll be home? Hopefully by tomorrow evening. I'm doing everything I can to wrap this up. We talked for a few more minutes, and then he had to go. After we hung up, I sat in our empty house, feeling unsettled. Everything Marcus said sounded normal, believable, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, December 19th, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I tried to distract myself with errands and Christmas preparations, but my mind kept drifting back to what I overheard. Finally, around noon, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I opened Marcus's laptop. I know. Invasion of privacy, violation of trust. But something was screaming at me that I needed to know what was happening. And if I was wrong, if there was nothing to find, then I'd feel foolish but relieved. His laptop wasn't password protected because we'd always trusted each other completely. I opened his email first, scanning through work messages, nothing unusual. Then I checked his text messages, which synced to his computer. Again, nothing suspicious. I was starting to feel ridiculous. Then I noticed his photo library. He was a photographer as a hobby, always taking pictures of buildings and architecture. I clicked on it, not really expecting to find anything.
The most recent album was titled Chicago Deck. I clicked on it. There were photos of buildings, skylines, the usual stuff Marcus photographed. But then, about halfway through, there was a photo that made my heart stop. It was Marcus, in a restaurant, sitting across from a woman. They were holding hands across the table, looking at each other with expressions that were unmistakably intimate. The photo was slightly blurry, like it had been taken quickly, maybe by someone at another table who recognized him. But it was clearly him. I scrolled through more photos. There were several more from what looked like the same evening. Marcus and this woman walking down a street, his arm around her waist, the two of them standing in front of a Christmas tree, her leaning into him, and then one that made me physically ill. They were kissing. Not a friendly peck, a real passionate kiss. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I checked the date on the photos. They were from 2 days ago, while I was at the hospital with my dying father, while I was comforting my mother, while I was holding my family together. Marcus was in Chicago romancing another woman. But here's the thing that really got me. These photos weren't taken by Marcus. They were sent to him. I checked the metadata. They'd been sent via airdrop from an unknown device. Someone had taken these photos and sent them to Marcus. Why would someone do that unless they were trying to expose him? Or unless it was someone who knew me and wanted me to find them? I sat there staring at the screen, my mind spinning. Then I did something else I'd never done. I went through Marcus's phone records online. We had a shared account, so I could access everything. I looked at his call history from the past week. My stomach dropped. There were dozens of calls to a number I didn't recognize, but there were also calls to numbers I did recognize. My brother Trevor's number. Multiple calls. Long calls. Some lasting 20, 30 minutes. Why was Marcus having long phone conversations with my brother? They were friendly, sure, but they never talked on the phone for that long. They barely talked at all unless we were all together as a family. I called Trevor. He answered after 4 rings. "Hey, Nessa, what's up?" "I need to ask you something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you been talking to Marcus recently?" There was a pause. A long pause. Too long. Yeah, we've chatted a few times." "Why?" "About what?" "Just stuff. Work. You know, guy stuff." "Trevor, I need you to be honest with me. What's going on?" "What do you mean?" "I heard you last night, you and Alexis, talking about how I don't know something, how it's right under my nose." Another pause. Then, "Vanessa, I don't think we should talk about this over the phone." My heart was pounding. "So there is something. What is it? Is Marcus cheating on me?" "Listen, can you come over? We should talk in person." "Just tell me, Trevor, please." He sighed. A long, heavy sigh. "Yeah, he is. I'm sorry, Nessa. We all thought you knew. We thought you were just dealing with it privately." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You all knew? Who's all?" "Mom, Dad, me, Bethany. We've known for months." The room started spinning. "Months? And nobody told me?" "We thought you knew. Marcus said you guys had an understanding, that you were working through it." "An understanding?" I was almost screaming now. "What the hell are you talking about?" "He said you knew about Claire, that you were trying to save the marriage, that you didn't want family drama about it." Claire. So the woman had a name. Who is she? "His coworker." "Vanessa, I'm so sorry. We really thought you were aware and just didn't want to talk about it. If I'd known you were in the dark, I would have said something immediately." I hung up on him. I couldn't listen anymore. My entire family knew my husband was cheating on me, and they said nothing. They let me walk around like an idiot, thinking everything was fine. They let me bring Marcus to family dinners, let me talk about our future, let me smile and laugh while they all shared this massive secret. I immediately called my mom. She answered cheerfully, "Sweetheart, how are you? Are you coming by today to help me with Christmas preparations?" "Did you know Marcus is cheating on me?" I asked flatly. Silence. Then,
Oh, honey, you found out. You knew? Well, yes, but Marcus told us that you two were handling it. He said you were in counseling, that you'd asked him to be discreet around family, that you didn't want us involved. And you believed him? You didn't think to ask me, your own daughter, if I was okay? I didn't want to pry. I thought you were being mature about it, working through your marital problems privately. How long have you known? Since August, maybe September? Your father and I ran into them at a restaurant downtown. They were having dinner and it looked intimate. We asked Marcus about it later and he explained the situation. We've been worried about you, honey, but we respected your privacy. I was crying now, angry tears streaming down my face. My privacy? You let me look like a fool for months. All those family dinners, all those conversations, and you all just kept this secret? We thought we were respecting your wishes. He was lying to you. There is no understanding. There's no counseling. There's nothing. I had no idea until 20 minutes ago. My mom gasped. Oh my God. Vanessa, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. He was so convincing. He seemed so concerned about you, about protecting you. I have to go, I said, and hung up. I called Bethany next. She answered with her usual bubbly energy. Hey, sis, what's going on? Did you know about Marcus and Claire? Her tone immediately changed. Oh, you know now? Bethany, how could you not tell me? Marcus said you guys were dealing with it. He showed us texts from you, saying you wanted to keep it private, that you were humiliated and didn't want family involvement. I froze. He showed you texts from me? Yeah, they looked totally real. You were saying how you were trying to work through it, how you loved him and wanted to save the marriage, how you didn't want your family to think less of either of you. I never sent those texts. He faked them. What? No way. They had your contact photo and everything. He faked them. I was shouting now. I never knew about any of this until today. Oh my God. Bethany whispered, Vanessa, I'm so sorry. We all thought he was so convincing. He even cried when he talked about how hard this was on you both. I felt sick. Marcus hadn't just cheated on me. He'd orchestrated this elaborate lie, manipulating my entire family into keeping his secret. He'd forged text messages. He'd cried fake tears. He'd played them all, and they'd fallen for it. But the worst part? They'd believed him over me. Not one of them had come to me directly to check if I was okay. Not one of them had questioned his story enough to verify it with me. They'd taken his word and left me in the dark. I sat in my living room, surrounded by half-wrapped Christmas presents, staring at our family photos on the wall. Every smiling face now felt like a lie. Every memory felt contaminated. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront Marcus. I wasn't going to have some dramatic showdown where he cried and begged and made more excuses. I was done. I spent the rest of that day methodically. I called a lawyer and scheduled an emergency consultation for the next morning. I went to the bank and transferred half of our joint savings into a new account in my name only. I started packing a bag, and then I started writing letters. I wrote a one to my mom and dad. I wrote a one to Trevor. I wrote a one to Bethany, and I wrote a one to Marcus. In each letter, I explained what I'd discovered. I explained how betrayed I felt, not just by Marcus, but by all of them. I explained that I needed space, that I needed time, that I couldn't be around people who had kept such a devastating secret from me, regardless of their reasons. To my parents, I wrote, You chose to believe a man I'd known for 6 years over the daughter you've known for 28 years. You chose his comfort over my truth. I can't forgive that right now, and I don't know if I ever will.
To Trevor, I wrote, You're my big brother. You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you protected my cheating husband. You let me sit in that hospital, caring for Dad, comforting Mom, holding our family together, all while knowing my husband was with another woman. That's not what brothers do. To Bethany, I wrote, You've always been my best friend. We told each other everything, or so I thought, but you kept the biggest secret of my life from me. You watched me talk about having a baby with Marcus, watched me plan our future, and you said nothing. I don't know how to come back from that. And to Marcus, I kept it simple. I know about Claire. I know you've been lying to me and to my family. I know you faked text messages to manipulate everyone into keeping your secret. I'm done. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't try to contact me. We're finished. I printed all the letters and put them in envelopes. Then I packed up everything that was truly mine. The things that mattered. Photos from before Marcus, my grandmother's jewelry, important documents. I loaded it all into my car. It was December 20th. Marcus was supposed to come home that evening. My family was expecting me at my parents' house the next morning to start Christmas preparations. Instead, I was leaving. I drove to Trevor's house first. It was late, after 10, but I could see lights on inside. I walked up to the door and slid his letter through the mail slot. Then I left before anyone could see me. I did the same at my parents' house. I stood on their porch, the porch where I'd taken prom photos and brought home boyfriends and celebrated every major life event. I looked through the window and saw my mom and dad sitting on the couch, probably watching TV, looking so normal, so cozy. I felt a pang of loss so sharp it nearly brought me to my knees, but I pushed the letter through the slot and walked away. Bethany lived in an apartment across town. I left her letter with the front desk person, asking them to put it in her mailbox. And Marcus's letter? I left it on the kitchen counter of our house next to the Christmas tree we decorated together just 2 weeks earlier. Then I got in my car and drove. I'd booked an Airbnb 3 hours away in a small town I'd never been to. I needed distance. I needed space. I needed to figure out who I was without these people who'd betrayed me. My phone started ringing around midnight. Marcus. I declined the call. He called again and again and again. 37 times that night. I turned my phone off. The next morning, December 21st, I turned my phone back on. I had 156 messages and 63 missed calls. I didn't read any of them. Instead, I blocked every single number. Marcus, my mom, my dad, Trevor, Alexis, Bethany, all of them. Gone. I spent Christmas alone that year. I'd like to say it was peaceful or healing, but mostly it was just sad. I cried a lot. I ate takeout Chinese food and watched bad movies. But I also felt something else, a strange sense of relief, like I'd been carrying this enormous weight and had finally put it down. My lawyer was amazing. We moved fast. Marcus tried to contest everything, tried to say I had abandoned him, tried to paint me as unstable. But I had evidence, those photos, those phone records. And my lawyer found more. Claire wasn't just a coworker, she was his boss. The emergency work trip to Chicago? Claire lived in Chicago. The client crisis? Completely fabricated. His firm confirmed they'd given him the time off as vacation days. Marcus had been seeing Claire for almost a year. He'd used family events as cover, telling her he had to visit his sick parents or attend weddings. He'd used work as cover with me, telling me about projects and clients that didn't exist. He'd been living a complete double life. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. I got the house, he had to buy me out of his retirement accounts, and I got a very generous settlement when my lawyer threatened to expose his fraud to his firm. As for my family, I didn't speak to any of them for 8 months. Not a single word. They tried everything. They showed up at my house. They sent letters. They sent emails from new addresses when I blocked their old ones. They sent mutual friends to plead their case.
My mom sent me a 20-page letter in April, explaining everything from her perspective. She talked about how convincing Marcus had been, how he'd shown them those fake texts, how he'd cried and seemed so genuinely worried about me. She talked about how she'd questioned it at first, but Trevor had convinced her to trust Marcus's version. She apologized over and over, begging for forgiveness. Trevor sent a shorter letter. He admitted he'd been wrong. He said he'd been so focused on not creating family drama that he'd failed to protect me. He said he'd confronted Marcus after I left, that they'd had a physical fight, and Trevor had broken Marcus's nose. He said his marriage to Alexis was struggling because he couldn't forgive her for not pushing him to tell me the truth. He begged me to call him. Bethany sent videos, crying videos, where she told me how much she missed me, how she'd been in therapy dealing with the guilt, how she'd realized she'd been a terrible sister. She said she'd deleted her travel blog and moved back home because she couldn't stand being away when our family was falling apart. She sent me one video every single week, like clockwork, just talking to me, telling me about her life, asking me to please, please forgive her. My dad didn't send anything until June. When his letter arrived, it was only 3 sentences long. I failed you. I'm sorry. I love you. That was the one that broke me. My dad, the man of few words, admitting he'd failed. I cried for hours after reading it. In August, almost 9 months after I'd left, I finally responded. I sent a group text to all of them. It said, "I'm not ready to see you yet, but I'm working on forgiveness. I need you to understand that our relationships will never be what they were. The trust is gone, and I don't know if it can be rebuilt. But I'm willing to try. Slowly." The responses were immediate and overwhelming. My mom called me crying. Trevor sent me a voice message saying thank you over and over. Bethany sent 50 heart emojis. We started slow. Phone calls first. Short ones, awkward ones, where we talked about surface stuff. The weather. Work. Nothing deep. Then, gradually, we got braver. We started talking about what happened. Really talking. I told them how betrayed I'd felt. They told me how manipulated they'd been. We all cried a lot. In October, almost a year after everything fell apart, I agreed to see them. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop. It was incredibly uncomfortable at first, but then Bethany made a joke about how terrible the coffee was, and my mom laughed, and suddenly it felt a little more normal. Not okay, not fixed, but manageable. It's been 3 years now. We're still rebuilding. I see them regularly, but there are boundaries. I don't share everything with them anymore. I keep parts of my life private. The absolute trust I once had is gone, and I don't know if it will ever fully return. But here's what I've learned. Cutting them off was necessary. I needed that time away to heal, to figure out who I was without them, to process the betrayal without their guilt and apologies clouding my judgment. Walking away wasn't cruel, it was survival. I'm dating someone new now. His name is Julian, and he's nothing like Marcus. He's honest to a fault, sometimes annoyingly so. When I told him about what happened with my ex and my family, he said something that stuck with me. People who truly love you will understand when you need space. They'll wait. They'll do the work. And if they won't, they didn't really love you in the first place. My family did the work. They went to therapy. They examined their own behavior. They stopped making excuses. They didn't demand forgiveness. They earned it, slowly, painfully, over years. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Cutting them off was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the thing that saved me. It taught me that I could survive alone. It taught me that my mental health and well-being were worth fighting for. It taught me that sometimes love means walking away.
That Christmas, I spent alone, eating Chinese food and crying. It was terrible. But it was also the beginning of me finding myself again. The beginning of me realizing that I deserved better than secrets and lies, and people who chose comfort over truth. I set boundaries now. Hard ones. If someone disrespects them, they're out. I don't care who they are. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and I'm never forgetting it. My relationship with my family will never be what it was. The innocence is gone, the blind trust is gone, but maybe that's okay. Maybe what we have now is actually healthier. We love each other, but we're also realistic about each other's flaws. We're honest about our feelings. We check in directly instead of assuming. We verify instead of just believing. Last Christmas was the first one we spent together again. It was weird. There were moments of tension, moments where old wounds flared up, but there were also moments of genuine joy, moments where I looked around at these imperfect people who'd hurt me so badly, but who'd also worked so hard to make amends,
and I felt something like peace. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if our relationships will ever feel completely safe again, but I know I made the right choice. I chose myself. I chose my sanity. I chose to demand better. And that's something I'll never regret, no matter how hard it was. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to walk away and give everyone space to grow. If you're in a situation where your family has betrayed you, where the people who are supposed to love you have let you down in devastating ways, know this. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to demand better. You don't owe anyone your presence, not even family, especially not family who has proven they can't be trusted with your heart. I cut off my entire family right before Christmas, and it was the best gift I ever gave myself. The gift of knowing my worth. The gift of refusing to accept betrayal. The gift of choosing me. 3 years later, we're finding our way back to each other, but this time, it's on my terms. This time, I'm not the naive girl who blindly trusts everyone. I'm the woman who knows her value and refuses to settle for less. And honestly, that woman is someone I'm proud to be.